All right, greetings everyone. This is your boy Elder Sayles, and I am coming here for a study on the Song of Solomon. And there are many different schools of thought pertaining to this book, and I just want to express um, my view on it and share my scriptural point. And a lot of it comes from a reference from the Companion Bible, and then looking further for myself. And I find that it is often preached from a different angle. I think that this is a more accurate angle. I think the other angle, and I'm not attacking anyone, but there's many commentaries that even take this position as well, and I differ with them as well. So I was asked, "What are you saying that the commentaries are wrong?" And I said the commentaries have some inaccuracies in it. Commentaries are made by people, and commentaries express positions, their comments gathered together, and you must keep that in mind. So, real quick, the Song of Solomon, in my opinion, to put it real quickly, is one of the greatest stories of true love in the midst of the greatest temptation and allurement that someone could possibly endure from one of the richest, wisest, wealthiest individuals in the land at that time to be able to resist all of that in the midst of it. It is quite a testimony to the love that this Shulamite woman had, and I even heard her recently named as Shulamite was actually her name. Someone said, and that was amazing to me. I had never heard that before, but I think she was a Shulamite, not named Shulamite. But anyway, that's just my opinion. And this thing I think can be explained. I'm going to read some of the notes from the structure of the Song of Solomon. I'll go back up here so you can actually see what I am reading, um, because it is quite interesting um, that we look at the focus and we see that um, there was only one woman in this aspect as far as that family. And when you look and see what happens in that, and the fact that she kept herself dedicated to her betrothed, her to her beloved. And if you say that this is mostly letters between Solomon and her, and Solomon swept her off her feet, and Solomon married her, and she became, all of this is about the love making between her and all that stuff. And well, if that's the case, then you'd have to say that Solomon is a shepherd. I'm going to just jump there real quick. You have to say that Solomon was a shepherd, because look at verse 7. It says, "Tell me, O thou whom my soul lovest, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon." Solomon never was a shepherd. His dad was David, but this is a king, and he is a king at this time. So I'm jumped a little bit ahead, but let me jump back up. All right. So notes on the structure for the song, and I'll actually make this available for download, so you can download it and look at it yourself. Because we're also going to reference some of these scriptures, and we may go over to uh, the Blue Letter, or excuse me, the Power Bible CD, and reference some information from there as well. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Make it a little bit bigger. Um, so it says, excuse me, scope of the book determined by the structure of the book as a whole, and the story gradually develops itself, and from the key, which is found in the last chapters, chapter 8, verses 5 through 14, the whole may be pieced together in the words of Dr. C.D. Ginsburg, Commentary, London, 1857, pages 4 through 6, to which the reference have been added in order to connect the threads of the events. There was a family, quote, there was a family living in Shulam, consisting of a widowed mother, several sons, and one daughter, who maintained themselves by farming and pasturage. The brothers were particularly fond of their sister and took her under their special care, promising that her prudence and virtue should be greatly rewarded by them. Chapter 8, verses 8 through 14, and you will find that to be true. Now, I'm going to take a side note and say that there are references that this book is not in total chronological order. There are some things that happen here and there, such as references to meetings, references to the Shulamite woman daydreaming and telling Solomon's handmaids about how she met her beloved and the things that her and her beloved experienced. And so those are the references as far as out of chronological order. It's not as some had. Well, I'll just leave that alone and say that that's basically it. You have to follow, and I'll try to lay it out as I can, if I can, when who's talking and at what time frame they're referencing. But the fact that Solomon never was able to win her, and she never gave herself to Solomon and became part of his wives or his concubines, I think will be laid out here in Scripture. And if that's the case, then the way that everybody had been teaching it, about it being such a great love story of Solomon coming and sweeping her off her feet, and just overpowering her with all his smooth moves, none of that worked. We'll see if the Scripture bears out that none of that worked. At any rate, in the course of time, so just explaining how things happen. In the course of time, while tending the flock, and according to the custom of the shepherds, resorting at noon beneath a tree for shelter against the meridian sun, she met with a graceful shepherd youth, to whom she afterward became espoused. Okay, so chapter 1 verse 7, chapter 2 verse 16, and chapter 6 verse 3. Let's jump and take a quick look at those right quick. Open it up in another window. So 1 and 7. We're going to go down to 1 and 7. Tell me, O thou, whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turneth aside by the flocks of thy companion? So she's talking about her beloved, and she's asking where he is taking his flock, feedeth, where thy make thy flock to rest at noon. We can look over here also. There's some references to break down further what's being said. Tell me again, soliloquizing, soliloquizing. I was gonna know I was gonna mess that word up, and maybe I go and edit it. Not really. To tell a soliloquy. Anyway, you see the structure here as we go. Okay, fetus, the sheep herders. This cannot be referred to Solomon, because Solomon never was a sheep herder. He never herded sheep. He may have owned tons of flocks, but I don't see the king out there herding no sheep and resting under no tree. Rest is to lie down, turneth aside, strayeth or wandereth, and among these. So that's one reference. The other reference was chapter 2 verse 16. So let's go up here, and we're in chapter 2. Let's go to verse 16. My beloved is mine, and I am his. He feedeth among the lilies. So once again, this is a reference to my beloved. That's a masculine reference. So when you see my beloved, that is the Shulamite woman speaking of her beloved in the masculine form. And then when you see my love, there's a feminine form that we're going to see referenced in very soon, showing the Shulamite as a speaker. He feedeth, he who feedeth. Feeding, that means feeding your flock, not eating himself, but feeding his flock that he's in charge of down by the lilies. And then also chapter 6 verse 3. Let's get there real quick. Chapter 6 verse 3. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feedeth among the lilies. And she's also going to use this reference, I believe, in verse 8, chapter 8, when she speaks to Solomon for the what I would call the final rebuke and resistance. So let's get back over here. It says, one morning in the spring, this youth invited her to accompany him in the field. But the brothers, overhearing the invitation and anxious for the reputation of their sister, sent her in order to prevent their meeting to take care of the vineyard. Chapter 2, verse 15. And she got her little revenge, basically. The damsel, however, consoled her beloved and herself with the assurance that though separated bodily, indissoluble ties subsided between them, over which her brothers had no control. So you may separate this body, but you can't separate my heart. So on this aspect, where he says that, let me see, right here. I'm sorry, go back here. 2. In order to prevent, that's verse 2 and 15, and I think I went a chapter ahead. No, 2:15. Okay. His legs are like pillars of marble set upon. Oh, shoot, I'm way up in chapter 5. I thought so. 2 and 15. Okay, here we go. Oh my dove. See, when you see oh my dove, once again, that's the feminine of him talking. Oh my dove, thou art in the clefts of the rock, in the secret place in the stairs. Let me see thy countenance. Let me hear thy voice, my sweet. For sweet is thy voice, and thy countenance is comely. Take us, the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. That's a reference to the sister right here. Catch us, the Shulamite here quotes the words of her brothers. See notes of children in verse 1 and 6, and you had to come back here and see this note here in chapter 1, verse 6, that speaks of the children. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun have looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. That's her brothers. They made me to the keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard have I not kept. And so you look at the footnote here, you can see that reference. Look not upon me, look not down on me, regard me not. And there's some other references for that. The sun have looked on me. Emphasis, the cause of her swarthiness, her darkness. The children's sons, i.e., her brothers, a reference to as speaking in verses chapter 2, verse 15 as well, and some other references as well as chapter 8 when they reference her dowry, reference her chastity, her purity. That's going to be the main question when she's returned at the end of this ordeal. We'll see that at the end of this study. Have again silicalizing, and structured above, and so on. So once again, going back over here, she was put in the field by her brothers to keep her from her loved one, and she told him in verse 16 that I am yours and you are mine. So regardless of what they do physically, they can't separate us in our heart. My beloved is mine and I am his. He feedeth among the lilies. And so moving forward, she requested him to meet her in the evening, chapter 3, verse 1. And as he did not come, she feared that some accident had fallen him on the way, and went in search of him and found him. Now, I want to jump over here. On the internet, I was doing a search about this, and the commentary was saying that this was Solomon searching for her and finding her and everything else. And so I'm going to bring in another program called the Blue Letter Bible, which is off the chain. I love it because it has, tons of Bibles. I got all these different Bibles I can go from. And for those of you, yes, I do use commentaries. Here is my commentary shelf. As you can see, quite a few dictionaries, topical guides, lexicons. So I just don't grab stuff out the air and just be spouting off stuff. But at any rate, we're looking at the Song of Solomon, and I believe we're looking at 1 and what was that, 12? Tell me that. Okay. Um, Looked upon me, keeper of the vineyard, feed his son. Okay, make thy flock rest in the. So here we find. Let me go back and see what's that particular one we was looking at. And it goes from the aspect of her searching for him. That's some other notes here. Okay, who outside, not the king. Okay. Um, I'm sorry, I got slightly distracted. I was looking at something else. Um, Turn to the side. All right. So I want to go and believe it was chapter Harvey console. All right, 3 and 1. She requested to meet him. So it's chapter 3, verse 1, and we go over here to the Song of Solomon, and we click on chapter 3, and this is the Geneva Bible notes. Um, and this tells me all of the cross references that have a note on 3:1. So let's look at Adam Clark. Um, the bride, mentions the absence of her spouse, her search after him, and her ultimate success. Okay, so that's not the one. I saw it appears that the bridegroom only saw the bride by night, in reference to her. He did not come as the usual. The bride, troubled on the account, rose and sought him, inquired of the city guard to continue till she fought on him. Okay, so that's there. There's the Bible notes here. Found him and sought him, but I found him. Okay, that's that one. And text. Not that one. Oops. Fawcett Brown commentary by night. Continuing love no valley. And actually, it was on it was on an internet site. So I would hope that I really wouldn't find that view expressed here in the commentaries. And of course, there's a lot of references to the church and seeking for Jesus and so on and so forth. Okay, so maybe it's not. I would be happy that it's not in here. I would be very upset. And I'm just checking one more time since I've come down this hole. Saw him, but found him now. Okay. Thought about him and the prophets. Alright. Cool. Alright. Thomas Sky. And as you see, there's a lot of references and points of view about this. So anyway, the fact of the matter is, she went and sought after him and didn't find him, and then searched a little further, and she did. So we have here, she requested him to meet her, found him in verse 4. The evening now was the only time in which they could enjoy each other's company, as during the day the damsel was occupied in the vineyard. On one occasion, when entering the garden, now this is very instrumental. On one occasion, when entering the garden, she accidentally came into the presence of King Solomon. So you see, it wasn't that she was in his presence all the time. They were in each other's presence. This was an accidental meeting, as you see in the scriptures, chapter 6, verse 11 and 12. who happened to be on a summer visit to that neighborhood, verses 6 through 11 in chapter 6. Struck with the beauty of the damsel, the king conducted her into his royal tent. Verses 1, chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. See, this is what they mean when they say that things are out of chronological order as far as how things happen. But the book, the beginning and the end, as far as her being taken away as a virgin and her being returned as a virgin, that is intact. There's no place in here that shows that King Solomon violated her, that they laid with each other, that they got married, that they consummated anything. There's only references because of the love letters and the daydreams and the references going back, speaking to the damsels and what have you about her love for her beloved, that people get it mixed up and misconstrued, and now they say that this means this and this means that, so she had to do this and so on and so forth, but it doesn't pan out um, as being so. So, struck by her beauty of the damsel, the king conducted her into her royal tent, chapter 1, verse 2 through 4, and there, assisted by his court ladies, verses 5 through 8 of chapter 1, endeavored with alluring flatteries and promises to gain her affection, but without effect. Chapter 1, verses 6 through 11. Now let's take a pause and look at that right quick. Chapter 1, let's look at the first chapter of King Solomon. I'm trying to go fast, but I got to take the time to go through it properly. Okay, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. That's Solomon's statement. When you get to chapter verse 2, that's no longer him speaking. That is the Shulamite woman speaking, and she's giving reference to the maidens about her love for her beloved. Here's a breakdown too here that breaks down the books. Verse 1, Solomon's song about the Shulamite. Verses 2 through 4, the Shulamite soliloquizes about her beloved shepherd. Verses 5 and 6, the court ladies who disdain her, answered by the Shulamite. Verse 7, the Shulamite soliloquizes about her beloved shepherd. Verse 8, the court ladies who tell her to return, answered by the Shulamite. And then verse 9 through 11, Solomon's admiration of the Shulamite. So let's look at that. Verse 2, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine, because of the savor of the good ointment. Thy name is ointment poured forth, therefore doth the virgins love thee. Draw me, we will run after thee. The king hath brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in thee. We will remember thy love more than wine. Thy upright love thee. I am black but comely, O ye daughters. And now she switches and she's speaking to the keepers, the ladies that are what, how does she call them? The court ladies. She's speaking to the court ladies here. I am black but comely, O daughters of Jerusalem. See, that lets you know who she's speaking of. They're also referred to as the daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, and as the curtains of Solomon. If you look over here, it talks about the fact that those were known to be black, swarthy, feminine daughters of Jerusalem, i.e. the ladies of Solomon's court. Kedar is dark, and all Kedar tents are black. So it says, I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black, because the sun have looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard have I not kept. This was the attempt of the brothers to keep her away from her beloved, because they wanted to protect the chastity and the reputation of their little sister. And many times you can remember, you can understand, little brothers don't want nobody talking to their little sisters, or big brothers don't want nobody talking to their little sisters and everything else, so they run in interference. So they tell me, O thou who my soul lovest, and now she's referencing her beloved. Tell me, O thou who my soul loveth. This is her talking about her own love. Where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock. to rest at noon. So she's in love with someone that's in charge of flocks. It can't be Solomon. For why should I be as one that turneth aside by the flocks of thy companions? If thou know not, O thou fairest among women. And now it's the court ladies speaking to her. If thou know not, O thou fairest among women. When you hear that term right there, O thou fairest among women, that's how they refer to the Shulamite woman. Go thy way forth by thy footsteps of thy flock, and feed thy kids besides the shepherd's tent. So this is her right here. If thou answer the court ladies, that's the court answer of the court ladies. They're speaking to her. And so they really didn't have much to say. Go ahead and, meet with your boo, do what you do, you know. But here Solomon comes in. I have compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in Pharaoh's chariot. Solomon, after he saw the dedication of her, was moved by this level of love. Solomon now speaks to her, my love, my friend. So in this aspect is my friend because she was not his lover or my beloved. A company of horses and pharaohs. Okay, so right here, I've compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses and pharaoh's chariots. Thy cheeks are comely in rows of jewels, and necks and chains of gold. We will make thee borders of gold with studs and silver. While the king saith, now look at the response. He's trying to flatter her. He just laid down all kind of heavy flattery on her. You know, I compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in Pharaoh's chariots. Excuse me. And he goes on. Verse 10, thy cheeks are comely with rows of jewels, necks of chains of gold. We will make thee borders of gold with studs and silver. Look at her response. While the king sitteth at his table, my spikenard sendeth forth the smell thereof. A bundle of mirth is my well beloved. She talking about somebody else. You giving me all this stuff. I'm telling you about who I'm in love with. Verse 13, a bundle of myrrh is my well beloved unto me. He shall lie all night between my breasts. She ain't talking about Solomon. Solomon trying to woo her. She telling Solomon about who she's in love with my well beloved. My beloved is unto me as a cluster of camphire in the vineyards of Engedi. Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes. Behold, thou art fair, my beloved. Yea, pleasant. Also, our bed is green. Green, that's a reference to being outside. That's a reference to lying under the tree where she met her love. Look at what he said the ceiling is. The beams of our house are as cedar, and our rafters are as fir. Those are references to trees. They're outside. Solomon never kicked it outside under no trees with her. That's where her and her shepherd love would spend their time. So, let me see if I'm going ahead of myself here. Bethany says to the servants, she servants. Okay, I had a couple of little notes on here, and I'm gonna make sure I bring out some points. So once again, to back up once again, her response to the king. While the king sitteth at his table, that means right there in his face. While the king sitteth at the table, Solomon advances fail. For his flattery, she opposes her unabated love for her shepherd lover, with whom she has an interview in verse 1 through 12 and 2 through 7. Said his supply was my spikenard, bundle, master and showing. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I brought out the other points. But here's the question. Who, my beloved, is unto me? Who? My beloved. Who is my beloved? You got to go back up again to chapter 1 and look and see who he says in verse 7. Tell me, O thou who my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon. So that is the aspect to where the one that she loves, my beloved, the one that she loved is a shepherd, and it is not a secret that she lets everybody knows. My beloved is mine and I am his. And she tells that to the king. So let me see. All right, so let's continue. We're going to look in chapter 2 now. We're going to look at this note here and see this reference right here in chapter 2, verses 8 up to 3 and 5. The Shulamite tells the court ladies, and this is the Shulamite and her beloved apart. The Shulamite tells the court ladies about her beloved, how he once came and invited her to go with him. That's in verses 8 through 14. This is a reference, and she's telling the court ladies the story. Hindered by her brothers, she tell how they set her at a task in the vineyards. That's chapter 2, verse 15. Verse 16 and 17, the Shulamite tells the court ladies how she waited for her beloved to come again in the evening. And 3 1 through 3, hindered by the watchman, she tells how she went out and sought him. Verse 4, chapter 3, the Shulamite tells the court ladies how she found her beloved again. Verse 5, hindered by the court ladies, she again adjured them not to hinder her, as before in verse 2 and 7, and in 3 and 5, and again in 8 4. And we're going to take a pause and take a look at those. That reference, do not hinder me, do not cause me to see love. Let's go in 2 7 real quick. That's a reference to her after she tells them something. For instance, in chapter 2. Here's a story. I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. As the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. As the apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Stay me with flagons, comfort me with apples, for I am sick with love. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. I charge you. So this was a reference that she was talking, giving reference to the relationship between her and her beloved, as we'll go over here and take a deeper look. And see, ending with okay. So right here, the Shulamite to her shepherd lover, they meet and exchange their vows. Verse 1, 12 through 14. Verse 15, the beloved, the shepherd to the Shulamite, it is thou who art beautiful, not I. The Shulamite to her shepherd lover, it is thou who art comely, not I. The beloved, the shepherd to the Shulamite, thou art my loved one. These are all the references here. The Shulamite to her shepherd lover, ending with an apostrophe to the court ladies, not to entice her or excite her affections for another person till she herself desires it. See note on awakening, and that's 2:7. We'll take a look at that real quick. And love. So this is the reference when she tells this story. She tells them, don't try to make me fall in love with nobody else. He says that when she goes and she tells her, you brought me to the banqueting house and to the banner, stay with me in flagons and comfort. And there's a point I think in there I wanted to bring out too. Let's see, stay, strengthen. All right. Banner over me, doth embrace me. I adjure you that, and the verb here is masculine. It is not uncommon to find this, but we find true feminine. Okay, it's not the point I wanted to bring. Alright, right here. Awake, entice, not to rouse from sleep, but to entice the passions. My love, my feelings or affections. Tell he, tell she. It is feminine to agree with love. Love never used in the abstract. This is an appeal to the court ladies not to try and incite her affections for Solomon. So on this aspect, we see that she is not saying that she's in love with Solomon. She's letting them know that she already has her heart set on someone else. You can find that in chapter 2, verse 7, also in chapter 3, verse 5. Let's jump down here. See what it says, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem. So let's back up and see what she's talking about. By night on the bed I sought him whom my soul loveth. Who is that whom my soul loveth? It's not Solomon, it is her beloved. I sought him, but I found him not. I will rise now and go about the city, in the streets and in the broad ways. I will seek him whom my soul loveth. If she was talking about Solomon, she would not go into the city, into the streets looking for Solomon. If she's captive in his castle, she wouldn't have to go far to find him. But she's searching in the streets for her love. Says, whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. The watchmen that go about in the city found me, to whom I said, saw ye him whom my soul loveth? Now this encounter is pleasant. There's another encounter she's going to have with them, and they're going to put hands on her. They're going to hurt her. Um, it was but a little that I passed from them, but I found him whom my soul loveth. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house. Now this is a memory. This is a flashback, because he took her down to mom's house and what have you. She was not at liberty to do that once taken into the custody of the king. Uh, I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her that conceived me. Here's a phrase again. I charge you, O ye daughters of Jerusalem. Once again, remember the daughters of Jerusalem are the court ladies of Solomon's court, by the roes and by the hinds of the field, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love, till he please. So once again, she's speaking of that aspect of you know, don't be trying to force me to fall in love. So back to this reference here. The Shulamite tells the court ladies about her beloved, how she once came and invited her to go with him. Hindered by her brothers, she tells how they set a task in the vineyards. The Shulamite tells the court ladies how she waited for her beloved to come again in the evening. Hindered by the watchman, she tells how she went out and sought him. The Shulamite tells the court ladies how she found her beloved again. And hindered by the court ladies, she again adjures them not to hinder um, as before. And in verse 2, 7, 3, 5, and again in 8, 4. And we didn't look at 8, 4. Jump over here real quick and take a peek at chapter 8, verse 4. I charge ye, O daughters of Jerusalem. So let's back up again. O thou were as my brother, sucketh the breast of my brother. When I should find thee without, I would kiss thee. Yea, I should not be despised. And the Shulamite returns home from Shulam, from Solomon, and is seen by her brothers and their companions approaching her beloved shepherd with her. So she's coming with her beloved. Right here, I am my beloved, and his desires toward me. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field, let us lodge into the valley. So here's the return when we get to chapter 8. I would lead thee and bring thee into my mother's house, who would instruct me, and I will cause thee to drink of the spiced wine of the juice of the pomegranates. His left hand should be, and you'll see the reference earlier, this is a fulfillment of something that was said earlier. His left hand should be under my head, and his right hand should be embrace me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love, until he pleases. And so, once again, we see that she stayed steadfast through this whole ordeal, and found her beloved again, hindered by the court lady. She again adjures him to hinder him not. Okay, so let's move forward. We're almost halfway done, y'all. um, so Going forward, we're gonna see 3 by night. She saw it. She saw it. She found him. Told him, "Don't force me." And then let's go down to awake, O north wind, come thy south wind. And I don't think I'm gonna jump on that. I think I'm gonna go and just keep going further to chapter 6. Okay, so there's a lot of other references here. You can, and like I said, I'll make this available for download for you, so you can do your own study in great detail. There's a couple of other references. Chapter 5, verse 6. Excuse me, chapter 5, verse 2 through 6 and 3. 5:2, the Shulamite tells the court ladies a dream she once had about her beloved shepherd, and that's that aspect of going back, as I stated in chapter 5, verse 2. Let's go over here, right here. I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, "Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled." For my head is filled with dew, and my locks and my drops of the night, even sleeping outside. I have put off my coat, how shall I put it on? I have washed my feet, how shall I defile them? My beloved put his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. She's not talking about Solomon. She's referencing um, her love. This is the dream right here, beloved shepherd. The court ladies, astonished at her love, asked, "What is there in this beloved more than any other?" And see, she's giving that testimony, break it down. So let me go over here and read it to you. Um, See, remember I told you there's a difference. Okay, so let me go. My beloved put his hand, and let me see. All right, verse 5. I rose up and opened to my beloved, and my hands dropped with mirth, and my fingers with sweet smelling mirth upon the handles of the lock. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. My soul failed when he spake. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. Now, here's the difference in the treatment. The watchmen that went about the city found me. They smote me. They wounded me. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that ye tell him that I am sick of love. What is thy beloved more than others? So here, after telling all that she went through to the damsels, they were so moved by the story that they asked this question in verse 9. What is thy beloved more than another beloved? O thou fairest among women. Remember that phrase, O thou fairest among women? What is thy beloved more than another beloved, that thou dost so charge us? And then she goes on to explain again, let me tell you about this man of mine. Let me tell you about this love that I have. The Shulamite describes him to them and ends, such is my beloved. So let's look at the beginning of verse 10. My beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000s. His head is as most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. His eyes are as eyes of doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. His cheeks are as beds of spices, as sweet flowers. His lips like lilies, dropping sweet smelling myrrh. His hands are as gold rings, set with the beryl, and his belly as a bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. His legs are pillars of marble, set upon sockets of fine gold. His countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. His mouth is is most sweet. Yea, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So this was the explanation that she gave to the court ladies about her beloved. And it was such an explanation. Look at the response that they gave. Verse 6, verse 1, chapter 6, verse 1. Whither is thy beloved gone, O fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with thee? It was such a moving thing for them to see, even with all the allurement of the king, even with their influence and everything else, that she would stand so steadfastly. That's why I say this is the greatest story of resisting temptation, not the greatest story of Solomon coming and swooping her off their feet, because all of Solomon's attempts failed, as he's going to make another attempt as he sees what's going on. He said, my beloved is gone down to his garden, to the bed of spices, to feed in the garden and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feedeth among the lilies. But yep, here comes Solomon. Solomon sees this going, and he comes and jumps in to try to get his flattery again. Thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with hammers. Turn away from thine eyes from me, for thy have overcome me. Thy hair is as a flock of goats that appear from Gilead. Thy teeth are as flocks of sheep which go up from, he putting it on heavy, which go up washing, whereof every one beareth twins, and there is not one barren among them. As a piece of a pomegranate are they temples within thy locks. There are threescore queens, and now he's bragging about all the women he got. There are threescore queens and fourscore concubines and virgins without number. And then he's really putting it on her and going to really focus on her. My dove, my undefiled, is but one. She is the only one of her mother. She is the choicest one of her tent. Of her that bare her. The daughters saw her and bless her, yea, the queens and the concubines, and they praise her. Who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the morning, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army of banners? That was Solomon putting it on. Look at her response in verse 11. I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vineyard flourished and the pomegranates budded. Or ever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of an Amminadab. Now I gotta put this in another reflection so you can see what she's saying. With after all this flattery that Solomon just gave her, she was like, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be here. This was an accident. I came down here for another reason, not to see you. I'm out of here. So much so that look at Solomon's response in verse 13. Return, return, O Shulamite, return, return, that we may look upon thee. What? And she say, what will you see in the Shulamite? What you looking at me for? Why you got all them women, you got all that stuff, why you tripping with me? As it were the company of two armies. How beautiful are thy feet with shoes, and thy princess daughters, and with joints of thy thighs are like jewels, and the work of thy hands of a cunning workman. Thy navel is like a round goblet which wandereth in liquor, and the belly is like a heap of wheat set with the lilies. The two breasts are like two young roes that are twins. Thy neck are a tower of ivory, thine eyes like the fish pool of Heshbon by the gates of Bath-Haban, the nose as the tower of Lebanon, which looketh down Damascus. Thine head upon thee is like a camel, and the hair on thy head like purple, and the king is held in his galleries. How fair and how pleasant art thou, O love, for delights! This thy statue is like to a palm tree, and thy breast to clusters of grapes. I said, I will go up into the palm tree, and I will take hold of those brought thereof. Now also thy breast shall be as clusters of vine, and the smell of the nose as apples, and the roof of thy mouth like the best wine for my beloved that goeth down sweetly, causing the lips of those that are asleep to speak. Here's the response: I am my beloved, and his desire is toward me. Now let me go over here and look and see. uh, these are all these advances that King Solomon made all the way up to verse 10, and she rejects them. I am my beloved, and his desires toward me. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the village. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourish, whether the tender grapes appear, and the pomegranates bud forth. There will I give thee my loves. She refused King Solomon. Here's a note over here. I am my beloved. I let me see. Pleasant, charming love. Love as an abstract. It is not the person who is here addressed. Okay, for delights. I am my beloved. I belong to my beloved. Referring to her beloved shepherd, the Shulamite speaks, and thus gently but firmly refuses the king's advances. Come, my beloved. This in verse 11. C notes. All right. And we jump down. So, the conclusion: the Shulamite restored. The Shulamite returns home from Solomon and is seen by her brothers and the companions approaching her beloved shepherd is with her. So, in verses starting in 5, the companion of the shepherd sees them approaching the Shulamite and her beloved. The brothers confer in verse 8 and 9. The brothers confer. Let me back up. I'm sorry. The Shulamite and her beloved comes home in verse 5 through 7. Verses 8 through 9. The brothers confer as to their sister's dowry. This is the most important part. The brothers confer as to the sister's dowry. What shall we do for her? If she be a wall, i.e., virtuous, we will adorn her. If she be a door accessible to any, we will shut her up. The Shulamite: I am a wall, not a door. Solomon has many vineyards. I will keep my own. Verse 13. The beloved shepherd asks her to tell them her story. The Shulamite owns him and beloved. So this is the reference, and this is the most important thing. That's why I said in the beginning of the notes that the story gradually develops itself, and from the key, which is found in the last chapters, chapter 8, verses 5 through 14. So as I wrap this up, let's take a look at this real quick. Oh, that were my brothers, and suck at the breast of my brother. When I should find thee without, I would kiss thee. Yea, I should not be despised. I would lead thee and bring thee into my mother's house, like she did back in the other chapter when she referenced that daydream, and when she brought him down and sought him and found him and took him into the mother's house. I was seeing if I could find that right quick. When she couldn't find him, it wasn't the verse 3. I think it was in chapter 5. Let's see real quick. Okay, here it is. Right now, I sought him, but I could not find him. Called him and gave no answer. Watchmen, I charge your daughters. Okay. Maybe that wasn't. Maybe she took him home the first time. So let me go back to chapter 3, verse 1. And see, rise, loveth, I saw him, but I found him not. The watchman. Okay. Chapter 3, verse 4. And let me go back over here so you can see it. Chapter 3, verse 4. Um, 3 and 4. It was but a little that I passed from them, but I found him whom my soul loveth. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her that conceived me. So that's what I was referencing to, chapter 3, verse 4. All right. Um, should find him without him a kiss, yea, should besides bring thee into my mother's house, who would instruct me. I would cause thee to drink of spiced wine and the juice of my pomegranate. His left hand should be under my head, and his right hand should embrace me. I charge ye, O daughters of Jerusalem, that ye stir not up or awake my love until he please. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness leaning on her beloved? So there's another point, that her beloved was not Solomon. Her beloved was known. Her beloved was known. Any question about one if they know? Yeah, her beloved was known unto them, and that's another thing. Let me back up real quick. In chapter 5, um, there's a reference. Oh, this way. In chapter 5, there's a reference that when the women are speaking, they ask the question uh, about him. And why do they ask the question? He said, "Whether is their beloved gone?" Back here, when she gets finished explaining uh, her beloved to them, in verse 6, they ask the question, "Whether is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whether is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with thee?" If her beloved was Solomon, they know who Solomon is. They wouldn't be asking, where is Solomon? They wouldn't be asking who he is. So that's another indication that the beloved was not Solomon. And so here, as we see, as we turn, it says that he was leaning, verse 5, who is this that cometh up from the wilderness leaning upon her beloved? I raised thee up under the apple tree. There thy mother brought thee forth. There she brought thee forth that bare thee. Set me as a seal upon thine heart, as a seal upon thine arm. My love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave, and coals thereof are coals of fire, which have the most vehement flame. And it's an interesting thing. When I went over there and looked at that reference, it said the flame of Jah, chapter 6. Let me see, 8:6. Let me go over there real quick, and we go over here to. We'll pull up this Bible, and we're gonna go. Actually, I'm just gonna go over here and open it. In Song of Solomon, we're gonna go to chapter 8, and what was it, 6? I'll charge ye. Who is this? Right here, vehement flame. So 8 and 6, I'm going to do the full compare. Just going to compare all of the different Bible versions for that particular verse. And let's take a look at these different references here. Wish I could make it larger so you can see it easier. Hold on. Let's see. Let's do this. Larger fonts. Alright, so we got larger fonts. We're going to go here and verse 6. Have everything. We need to go full compare. Click it here. Alright, so the King James. I just want to look at the last scriptures and see. The last verses. Vehement flame. Very flame of Jehovah. Vehement as its flames. Flashes or flames of Jah. Flames of Jehovah, most vehement flame. So I just thought that was interesting. Flame of Yahweh. This is Young's literal translation. Set me as a seal of thy heart and a seal of thy arm, for strong as death is love, sharp as a shield, and jealousy is burning, our burning of the fires of the flames of Jah. So it's just interesting on that. Anyway, many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. In other words, all this stuff that I went through, all these things that the king had lavished upon her was not enough to turn her love. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned. Contemned. Verse 7 here, cannot quench, earthly things cannot destroy that which is divine. So we have a little sister. Now here's the test, the litmus test from the brothers, whether she would be received or rejected. Here we have one of the brothers now speaking. We have a little sister. Our sister is still young. She hath no breast. The idiom for not yet marriageable. This is what the brothers had once said in earlier days. The reference here is not obscure when we note who the speakers are and when they said this. Spoken for, demanded in marriage. Okay, so it says, we have a little sister, and she has no breast. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she shall be spoken for? If she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver, and if she be a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. So we have to go over here and see. It says, if she be a wall, spoken by another brother, i.e., like a wall that keeps out all intruders, place, turret, or battlement, a door, i.e., accessible to anyone, boards, planks, and panels. So that was the question. Did she keep herself, or did she allow, like a door, someone to enter? Verse 10. Her response is, I am a wall, and my breasts like towers. See, I'm grown now. I've been through some stuff, but I'm still maintained, and I'm still a wall. I'm still standing. The standards are still there. I'm still pure and intact. And my breasts like towers. Then was I in his eyes as one that found favor. Now, this is an interesting note here. It says, I am a wall. The Shulamite thus replies, I stand firm against all the blandishments of Solomon. I am not a door admitting anyone. And it says his eyes, i.e., her shepherds, lovers, or the brothers who last spoke, not Solomon. Solomon is mentioned in the next verse, that their eyes were favorable toward her. They received her back. Solomon had a vineyard at Bel Haman. He let out the vineyard unto keepers. Every one for the fruit thereof was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver. My vineyard, which is mine, is before me. That's her chastity statement. My vineyard, which is mine, is before me. Thou, O Solomon, must have 1,000, and thou that keep the fruit thereof 200. So here we see Solomon, the Shulamite, is demanding her reward, giving her reason. Baal Haman, not yet identified, the keepers of the husbandmen, i.e., the tenants, is before me, is my own. Thou, let me see. Instead of those words, supply means keep thou. So, basically, is referencing. It says, "Thou that dwellest in the gardens, the companion, hearken to thy voice, cause me to hear it. Make haste, my beloved." Here's that last reference as a beginning. It ends this way. Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a roe or to a young hart. That means get here quick. Take off upon the mountains of spice. No longer mountains of distance as you stay here, but now close. So this is the reference to let you know in this last aspect, chapter 8, verses 8 through 14, is the test that the brothers gave to the sister when she came back. And some commentaries even allude that there is another girl there. This is another sister. But I don't think that's correct either. But once again, this outline will be available for you for further study of your own. Like I said, it's not in a reference to trying to prove anybody wrong or anything like that. It is just a further, deeper understanding, because I think the greatest portion of the story is the Shulamite's woman ability to resist all the trapments and allurements of King Solomon and not be overwhelmed and be true. And at the end of the book, She is returned into her family with her beloved, as it says here in chapter 8, that she is viewed coming with, and her beloved is with her. They knew who he was. Of course, they knew who he was. They was trying to keep her from him by making her work in the field so they couldn't hook up, and he stayed faithful. She was carried away by the king. You could think all kind of stuff. Oh man, the king and came and got my girl. Well, I ain't no way I can compete with the king. How can I compete with the king? I'm just a shepherd boy. All I got is this and that. Look at him. Look at his you know what I'm saying, his entourage. Look at this and this and that. But yeah, we sneaking and meeting, and she kicking it with me, saying, look, I can't wait to get out of this junk. I don't care about none of that stuff. I'd rather be with you out there in the field, kicking it under the tree, looking at the stars, than to be up in there. And if you find some love like that, that's it. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what worth dying for. And that's what everybody seeks. But this last verse, as I close it, it says that in verse 5, who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? They was even walking hand in hand. They was even walking close, coming back. That when they were seen together, and they was identified and accepted. The test still had to be given, but the test was given, and they passed. All right, I will holler at y'all later. Peace.